Okay, are we starting? Yeah. Oh, good. This is Diane Larchman. She needs a hand because she can't see who's out there. She is the co-chair of the San Miguel Archive Project, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what they have been doing, what we're doing today, and where we're going.
Hi there. I'm the co-chair with Manuel Gomez, who's here, and it's sort of a special night tonight because I got involved in this. I've been here 33 years, and I got involved in this project about 1991 or 92. No, 92 or 93. And the reason I got involved with it was because of Valerie's mother, Sue Beer, who came here. What year did your mom come in? When you were children? 71. And she said, because I had a production background, and she said, oh, come and see these videos that we've been doing, these archives. And I went to Fran Rowe's house across the street, and I saw these videos, and I knew enough. I knew technology at that time, and I knew that the tapes and Betamax and all that were not going to last. So we took all these videos and we put them on CDs, which are now dinosaurs also. And then through the years, we started doing more interviews. And all of this stuff, if any of you want to make a feature film on San Miguel, all you have to do is go to San Miguel Archive Project on, on Safari or whatever you use, and go to YouTube. And there are almost 90 interviews there. And some of them are boring as hell, and some of them are fascinating. They really are. But Manuel and I are working together on this, and it's really been fascinating. And it's nice to talk about the history of San Miguel rather than restaurants all the time. It's a special place, and the history is very special. And Valerie's mother, who was one of the founders of this project with Adelaide Medallia and a whole bunch of other people. And Sue is extremely active in San Miguel, in the library. And then in Atención, she was the editor of the Atención, our newspaper. She started Jóvenes Adelantes. God, Valerie, what else was she? She was involved in, and she was a little thing, and she had more energy than most of the people I know. So I think that tonight is really a special honor. So your mom, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago she passed away. But I think she had a very full life, and I think we all should be grateful for what she donated to our city.
We have a panel discussion, and I'm going to ask, first we're going to just go right down the row. We have some questions. First of all, I'm going to ask these people to introduce themselves. They kind of have an extra name. I'm kind of jealous. I don't have an extra name like they do. And so the first question is going to be, tell us your name, and then tell us a little bit about your family's roots in San Miguel de Allende so we can establish who our panelists are today.
Should I?
Yes, we're going to go right down.
Okay. It's working? Yes. My name is Paula Ramirez Herrera. I'm, I would say, 6th generation in San Miguel on my mother's side. My mother was a 5th, both ways, parent and a father and mother. I'm just on her side. And I come from a very long time residence in San Miguel.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jamie Charles Fenton Soto. My roots in San Miguel are from the Soto family. My father was an American. We arrived in 1970. So yeah, I've been here for a long time. And I used to be president of the Red Cross here in San Miguel. And my family has been here for a long, long time, since before America was America. They arrived here in 1750, 1756, somewhere around there. I'm not very good with dates. But I've been here since I was 6 years old, and I hope I can answer your questions. Please forgive me if I forget some certain dates and certain names, but yeah, I'll help you out with whatever you want.
I got mine. Hi, my name is Carmen Salmerón Villegas, and my roots here in San Miguel basically have to do with my mother's side of the family, at least between 6 or 8 generations, not as long as Jamie, but long enough. And 3 of my 4 grandparents are from San Miguel. So this is where I have my roots for the most part. I've been living here since 1968. I came back from the States where I grew up at the age of 12, and I've been back since, and I was in school with Paula.
I'll make a comment. I'm here because my Uncle Don, Jamie's father, Jamie's my first cousin, came down during the GI Bill, like you've all heard so much about, and he landed in Hotel Salto for the evening. He came down on a bus from Tacoma, Washington, woke up, looked across the dining room that morning, and saw someone he thought was Sophia Loren. Well, that was my Aunt Gloria. Yeah. Tell me your mother's full name. I love it.
My mother's name was Gloria, Maria Guadalupe Gloria Sauto. So they used to have real long names during that time, especially for the Spanish descendant families.
But it is so interesting. We were here last time doing this panel, and Sue Beer was sitting right in front, smiling the whole time. We were talking about the Instituto Allende and how much that affected the course of history as we know it in San Miguel de Allende, and certainly Jamie and I today are just proof of that. All right, we're going to go on and talk about, here's the question. How did having these deep family roots in San Miguel affect your early life here?
Well, all I can say is that I was a very, very happy child growing in this town. It was by far a smaller town than it is right now. It was like just family. We knew each other. We knew everybody. The school was full of kids. You could do anything. The jardín was a gathering place. And most of all, it was freedom, what we could feel. Even though I was born after the GI Bill, and you know, I think that pretty well accustomed to a bicultural community.
As a matter of fact, when I arrived in 1970, it was kind of a cultural shock because I didn't speak any Spanish. I was 6 years old, and everybody knew me, and I didn't know anybody. Everybody knew me because I was a Sauto. As being a Sauto is, oh, you're Gloria's kid. So everybody knew me, but I didn't know anybody. And it was a cultural shock, but I got over it.
As for me, I came back from the States when I was 12, enough to the time that Jamie came back, and my experience also about not knowing anybody really and having people suddenly say, oh, you're Maria's daughter. That continues to this day, okay? For those who still survive my mother, right? And where my father's name or his surname are relegated to the background, it's my mother and her family who are really more prominent. Having said this, what I did realize that I had was an automatic sense of identity. Even if I didn't want the identity, I had the identity. And usually people, I understand, struggle to find and establish their own identity. Not us here in San Miguel. We already had one. So that in itself resolves all sorts of issues.
What interesting answers. And I like to see that it's your matriarchal line that is connecting you know, you all here. And I don't have a question about that, but if we want to bring up how important grandmothers were growing up here, we'll do that. But the next question is, so you heard a lot about your family's history, and who were you hearing it from when you were a child?
Well, obviously, it came from my mother. My mother was born in a family where the education was a very important thing. My grandmother had a high school degree. My mother got an administration degree. So for her, reading and studying, and she had a wonderful memory. So she could remember what happened when she was 3, when she was 4, and could tell you the changes that by that time San Miguel had experienced. And obviously, during all of her life, she would bring up things over and over about families in here, people that were here, how they were related, and how life was. And the one thing that I have to mention, she never regretted the changes that San Miguel had gone through, because she really enjoyed her life. She never lived in another place but San Miguel.
Yeah, for most people, gringos, you know, get used to being called a gringo, because gringo is not an insult. A gringo is the way they refer to American citizens in Mexico. However, when we arrived, they would call me a pocho, which means that I'm both. I'm an American and a Mexican. So I was already being recognized as a Mexican, even though I wasn't fully Mexican by then. I didn't become a Mexican until 1992. And I was informed that I was Mexican because suddenly there was a flaw in the Mexican Constitution that everybody was overlooking, and by the Mexican Constitution, I was recognized as Mexican. And San Miguel was very small, and most people, and it's still relatively small. Most people depend on each other. You start forming communities in San Miguel and social groups, but those social groups are interconnected. So it's very important to be sociable within the community.
Jamie, who told you about the Sauto history in your family? Who liked to share that?
Oh, well, the person who mostly told me about the Sauto family, it wasn't my mother or my grandmother. It was his name was Blas Sauto. He was a second cousin. He was a cousin of my mother's. He was my uncle. And we would sit down at a place. Well, my dad founded a restaurant called El Carousel. I don't think anybody remembers. Well, Cami remembers the Carousel and the Tio Bibo. And he would sit down with us and tell us all about my family. They've been here for a long time. If you go to the Hotel Sauto and ask around, if you go into the Hotel Sauto, you see the family crest. And it says 17, it's before the American Revolution. It's before 1776. I think it was 1760 something. I'm not very good with dates. Ni modo. But we've been here for a long time. And the Sautos. And it used to be a royalty from the Spanish community. So Blas would sit down with me, and he would tell me all about the Sautos during the colonial times, all the way from the Revolution up to now.
Let's move on to Carmen with that question. Who was talking about your family history while you were growing up?
It was my Aunt Ramona, my mother's older sister. The woman had an amazing memory, especially for chronicles and anecdotes and vignettes having to do with San Miguel. I grew up listening to, at least from my Aunt Ramona's account, about everything that mattered that had occurred in San Miguel for the last 3 generations. And some of it, of course, I have forgotten, but a lot of that still stands out. And it again strengthens that sense of identity in me in this case. And it sounds like also in the other people who are here in the panel with me.
Thank you. And so this question kind of follows that one. Because of these deep family histories and coming from Europe, from Spain, did you receive traditions handed down to you from your family history that perhaps you're still enjoying today? Think of a tradition that you'd like to speak about that comes from the deep past. And so many of us wish we had that.
Well, as you can see me, the biggest tradition in my family is food. The cooking was something that was very, very specific at my house. There was at the beginning pretty much a Mexican cooking thing, but then my father came from a Spanish family. My grandfather was Spanish. So the mixture made it very, very good. And if something I can carry on until this date is the cooking and the recipes of my family.
We'd like you to do a fundraiser for this organization and cook for us all.
Oh my God.
Okay, all right, just an idea.
I'm ready to eat, but I don't know.
Oh, okay. I'd love to have some of those grandfather's recipes.
Oh, yeah, my mother was not a very good cook, but my grandmother was. And I had these two, my mother had 2 sisters. Both of them are unbelievably good cooks.
Okay, so we're talking about traditions that come from these deep family roots. What about you, Jamie, comes to your mind?
Well, I remember it was going back and forth. You know, I mean, Christmas, for example, the Christmas traditions in the States are different from the traditions here in Mexico. The tradition here in Mexico, we start Christmas on December 12th and don't end until January 6th. I mean, that's what they call the Guadalupe Reyes. It starts on the Virgin of Guadalupe Day, which is December 12th, and it doesn't end until all 3 Wise Men Day, which is on the January 6th. So that's a long time. And you had posadas all the time. San Miguel, every single weekend would have a party. You know, we'd be able to go out either, especially if we were from the American community, because we had to go to the Mexican parties and then go to the American parties. So we were partying all the time. They weren't, I mean, like big bacchanals, but they weren't really big bacchanals, but they were. The Americans stuck together. I hope we're still doing that, because the American community is the one that keeps the traditions alive. We had the pastorelas. I don't know if anybody remembers Mashabeo. Mashabeo was another foreign community member, and she started the drama theater and ballet. And she started in the arts, and she would have every single 1 week before the Christmas, she would have the pastorelas, which were representations of Christmas, in which which we all participated. I was one of the actors too, and she would have the ballet, and that became a tradition all the way until Masha died. And when Masha died, it was all over. No more pastorelas. Somebody had to pick up, and nobody dared to, because all the work that she did, it was too much for one person. Yeah.
Love my cousin, he loves to talk. I want to hear from Carmen for a minute. Yeah. All right. And I do want to mention that, you know, we had a tradition here of the Villa Jacaranda Hotel, which is what Jamie's dad started, which did the movies to begin with, and was such a place for gathering, and then a lot of the Christmas memories are from there. I publish the Insider's News, and I happen to know that pastorellas are alive and well again. We can look at the December issue online. Carmen, is there anything we want to say about the clothes of Jesus?
The clothes? Well, there are two things that I want to mention, and one of them is to end with what Jamie was saying about the pastorelas. I, too, was a member of Masha's acting troupe and founding the pastorelas, which are these Christmas-related plays that always have symbolic figures of what the nativity is supposed to be. And they began in 1975 until Masha's death. I mourn that because, as Jamie said, we no longer have them the way we used to, and we would act them out in the open in the building of the Bellas Artes, in the courtyard. That made it even more meaningful. Having said this, the other tradition that I want to talk about that my family is a part of is that from the indigenous side of my family, my great-grandmother, my mother's grandmother, again on my mother's side, was an Otomi Indian, and her family was a key note in creating and establishing the pilgrimage from our Lord of the Column, El Señor de la Columna. And we barely passed the torch of what our obligations or duties were for that pilgrimage and the organization of that barely 15 years ago. It began in 1823, and it was created in order to ask or request that San Miguel not be beset by a plague at the time, an epidemic of sorts. And as a result of that, the pilgrimage succeeded in warding off that plague or epidemic and went on to become a truly deeply rooted tradition here in San Miguel. It takes place 2 Sundays or Saturday and Sundays before Easter. It's a movable holiday. It now numbers between 15 and 20,000 people. It is a very important tradition here in San Miguel, and I am proud to say that my family has been a part of that, well, until fairly recently. The pilgrimage began and continues to begin in the little town or community of Atotonilco, which is a little town between here and Dolores. It takes place, as I mentioned before, 2 Saturdays and Sundays, rather, before Easter. In this case, this year, it will be held on April 4th to end on April 5th. Okay, it's an all-night pilgrimage that begins at midnight with a midnight mass in Atotonilco, and then a statue of the Lord of the Column, in this case, El Señor de la Columna, which is a figure of Christ as he has been flogged by the Romans during that Passion or the Holy Week that we commemorate of how he was tortured and then crucified. So that image is prepared to go on this pilgrimage. I call it going on tour because the image or the statue is in Atotonilco. It comes through the pilgrimage to San Miguel and resides at the Church of San Juan de Dios for at least, I think, close to 2 weeks now. But throughout that procession is where we have all these people congregate. And by that, I don't mean just the locals. The locals are an important part of it, but what I also find fascinating, because I have gone to it, I have gone to the pilgrimage myself, is that it brings in all sorts of extremely interesting and interested intellectuals and professors of cultural anthropology from all over the world. They consider this to be an extremely important event that they want to record because of the way that you do merge the pagan aspect in religion in Christianity or in Catholicism with the European form of Catholicism. It is unique, truly unique. I recommend it highly.
Carmen, was your family in charge of the clothing?
Yes.
Can you describe that?
Okay. My family has always been, well, until recently, in charge of the clothing that the statue of our Lord of the Column and Señor de la Columna wears, both its usual uniform as well as the clothing that the figure or the statue wears throughout the procession and while it resides here in San Miguel before going back to Atotonilco. And the tradition or the ritual is that a man will knock on the door of my house and suddenly just say that he's here for the clothing of the child, the boy child, la ropa del niño. And I'm to understand that he's there to pick up the newly pressed, recently mended, or replaced clothing that the image wears. He is delivering the clothing that the image wore for the entire year so that it can be laundered, renewed, whatever. And then, after the procession is over, the same fellow knocks on the door again to return the clothing used for the pilgrimage and to take what has now been recently laundered for the image or the statue to wear throughout the entire year. The first time this happened to me, I was 13 years old. I answered the door. I didn't know what the man was talking about. And I'm still scratching my head when one of my aunts peers out and she says, "Oh, I know what it is." And then she explained this to me. So again, this is a fascinating kernel of my family history that I wanted to share with you.
The privilege of being part of such a deep history that continues uninterrupted is wonderful for all of your families. I'm going to move on to something a little lighter, just to ask if you would share an anecdote or a special memory of a decade that you liked here, be it the 70s or the 80s, because of your position as a family with deep roots. What is a great antidote that you might want to bring up? Don't have to tell about kissing boys at Mamma Mia's. You don't have to tell about La Fragua. But if you want to, go right ahead.
What it could be.
La Fragua, well, people forgot about La Fragua.
I think that for me, it was because I was starting in the 70s, I was starting high school and I went to the States. So for me, just to find out that this little town, as it was, gave you the opportunity to get into a wider, very wide world and learn about more about why you could live in a community that provides a lot of knowledge in so many ways, because San Miguel, besides being a community with a GI Bill, it was as well a very artistical community. You were exposed to whatever form of art you will think. And the Instituto, for instance, was a very, very active school, art school in all ways. And as well, if I could remember something, is the Bellas Artes building being what it was. You could get into that building and all of a sudden you had a piano lesson as well as a violin and dance classes. And so being exposed to that, I felt that I was really, really lucky that I could live in a community like this, because it made me learn a lot and wanted to be more than I was at that time.
I don't think you know how important the radio station was to San Miguel. You could put anything on the radio station. You could be a star. Jamie lost his little dog named Nifty, and my uncle called me in the U.S. It's a tragedy. The dog's missing. All you'd had to do was go to Sollano Street and get on the radio station and say your dog was missing. And there you had it back.
Oh, yeah, it was on the
They were
radio.
out on their Stingray bikes looking for Nifty. The boys used to be able to ride bikes on these cobblestone streets and terrorize cats and.
Actually,
that were out
I
there.
had to take a taxi all the way to Dolores because that's when they kidnapped Nifty.
Nifty was kidnapped.
He was kidnapped. My dog was kidnapped. And the whole neighborhood said, hey, I saw the guy who took him. And they told me, and I got on a taxi and caught the guys. But that's because they helped me a lot. The very same community, they said, oh, your dog, they took him to Dolores.
But see, that's what a good small community it was. Everybody knew whose everybody's dog was. These are important days. And Carmen, we're talking about a special memory of something that was fun or meaningful.
I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start, but I think it would probably be kind of a party-related theme like Jamie's, in the sense that I'm happy and proud to say that I really enjoyed some of the healthiest kind of partying of the 70s and the 80s, and the safety factor that we took for granted all the time. I had great friends. We had wonderful times at the discos, which at the time, just so that you know, and why we kind of gravitate toward the party theme, is that San Miguel at the time in the 70s, mid-70s, and the 80s was the party town by excellence, or par excellence, within like a 500-mile radius at the time. So we would have young people come into San Miguel from Monterrey, as far north as Monterrey and Saltillo, just to party, or as far south as Oaxaca and Puebla, okay? And therefore, we had all sorts of young people from literally most parts of Mexico at the time, which also made it very interesting and fun in a way that we want to say, regrettably, we don't have anymore, but I chalk it down to age. We're not up to it anymore the way we used to. But that was something that San Miguel also had at the time.
Does anybody remember, they used to have a thing called a pamplonada here? Does anybody hear that? Well, it was taken off because but that was a big party.
The running of the bulls.
Oh, the
That
running of the
happens
bulls.
To be the running of the bulls. Can you just give them a visualization really fast of how that worked that
Okay,
weekend?
the way it worked, it was supposed to be designed on the way up. There's even a history of it. It was between Rafa da Curt and
From La Fragua.
and from La Fragua. And they said, well, why don't we have a party in something like they have in Pamplona, the running of the bulls in Pamplona. They couldn't do it because the architecture of the city didn't help. So what they did is they closed the circuit and they let the bulls just run loose on the people. And
In the main square.
yeah, a lot of
In the
people-
square.
Yeah, in the main square.
Did any of you run in front of the bulls?
I did.
Oh, he did.
When I was a kid, I was a kid. I was much younger then, but
It was stopped just about a decade ago.
Yeah.
Cruelty to the bulls primarily is what happened. And again, people came from across the nation to be here. Well, this is another question, and it's about changes in San Miguel that have affected you for the better. We're not going to talk about any worse, for the better.
Certainly, yeah, just for the better. Because, I was gone for a number of years, and when I came back 30 years ago already, it was a totally different town. I never lost contact with it because my family was here. My parents were here, but I was just a visitor. I was not living here permanently. So I didn't realize the changes until I came and lived here again. And I never had resented them. On the other hand, I think that due to the enormous help that all the organizations do for the people in town, that is invaluable. The town is the community that we have. There are chances for kids to study medical things. Educational is the most important thing, but as well, there are communities that they would never be able to reach for the services that they have if they wouldn't be for all these organizations that mainly the foreign community had formed. And obviously, that is a big change, and I would never resent it. I think that for the welfare of our community, everything is for good.
What a beautiful answer. Thank you. Jamie, what are you thinking about?
Well, a lot has changed in San Miguel. I mean, and a lot of it has been for the better, and some of it has been unfortunate. But most things that have been going on in San Miguel, the city has to grow, and it has grown, and. Thankfully for the American community, because of the American who is very responsible for keeping their traditions. They're the first ones to defend the traditions here. That thing that I mentioned before, the running of the bulls, it was fun for a lot of people, but it was terrible because of the way they treated the animals, and then they couldn't have. The party was fine, but a lot of people were against it. So they decided to end it. And that's because of the community getting together and say, is this good for San Miguel or is it not? And it was not being good for San Miguel. It was too much, it was a little bit too much. So they ended it. But a lot of things that have progressed in San Miguel with even modernization. We have new radio stations. We have TV. We have TV transmissions. We communicate more, and it has been helping us a lot. So.
Carmen, what are you thinking about?
Well, to round out what Paula was saying in terms of the benefits of this community, I would point more toward the strengthening over what is now nearly 100 years. We're just shy of 100 years of having the expats and the presence of the expats here in San Miguel as a constant. And consciously or unconsciously, veering and gearing toward more of a multicultural society and community. Yes, there are aspects where both cultures, both communities are more of a parallel, but there are times that they merge, and they're merging even more in far more interesting ways than they had before. And that continues to stimulate and keep the town alive and well.
Well, we're kind of wrapping up, and I'd like to know something that has never changed about San Miguel that you love and that you think your ancestors also loved.
Okay.
No more parties, Jamie.
No more partying. I think that ended about 10 years ago. But anyway, family and friends in San Miguel. That's what it has been all about all this time since 1950s, since the arrival of Americans coming down through the GI Bill, just like my dad did, and just like Sterling Dickinson did. Sterling Dickinson, they even have a street named after him. And that community was so well melded together, and that's what I would hate for people to lose that. I mean, you stick together and you help the community, and that's how San Miguel has become as beautiful as what you see today.
And where we're sitting today at the Biblioteca is certainly a part of that.
Oh, yeah.
We must acknowledge who they are and what they give to the unity of our communities. Paula, do you have a thought about something you love, your ancestors love?
Well, I think that, and I think it comes from my family, to live in a community that is open, is friendly, and is warm. Everybody's welcome, and there's no difference about where you're coming from or what you do, or it's just a matter of knowing people and getting to be kind of part of this community?
I would say, and again, it's an echo of what both Paula and Jamie are saying. I think that the bottom line is the continuity of that respect, of the empathy, and the acceptance of the community with each other, including the expats. That is not normally verbalized, but it's there. And that, again, is what keeps the community moving and going forward.
So we're moving into question time. And I didn't ask anyone to tell us where they lived in particular. Do you still live in Centro?
No.
No? Where do you live?
En La Lejona, behind La Comer.
Beautiful. Jamie, where do you live?
I live in Oromi, way out there.
Otomi, Carmen?
Well, having lived in Centro most of my life to this day, while I know that there are huge drawbacks like the traffic, like the noise, I'm fortunate in living in the location that I am in Centro, where the corner store is still down the corner. And yet, if I want to go into town, I'm only one street away from being almost next to the Jardín. So it makes me feel extremely spoiled in spite of the drawbacks, because I can still walk almost anywhere I need to go. But having said that, yes, we are aware of the drawbacks of what has happened to Centro, and while we do bemoan them, what I do honor and respect is that, at least given the demands for San Miguel to continue to keep or hold on to its heritage situation, there is still respect for the architecture that continues to remain not untouched, but at least respected, so that we don't see high-rises in Centro, for instance. And there is still the demand to adhere to the guidelines, the architectural guidelines of what Centro has to be, so that it holds on to its essence. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Is there another question?
I wondered if you think that the expat community mixes well with the Mexican community, and how do you feel about that?
This is San Miguel. They mix in perfectly well. I mean, ever since the 50s, when Sterling Dickinson arrived, actually San Miguel was in danger of becoming a ghost town, and it came back to life with the Americans, the gringos.
And please give our panel a hand. They took time to come today. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. It just means so much to see your interest and to have your participation.